Thank you very much, EV Reporter, for organizing a seminar on electric vehicle charging infrastructure. As Vineet mentioned, we have been tracking this industry since the very beginning of when event talks started happening around electrification in India in 2010. So we have seen the journey, right? And one thing we are very sure about is why I said that this is the timely organization of this conference. That is why I mentioned that this is the timely organization of this seminar, because we believe that next few years are going to be packed with several actions around charging infrastructure that will be presented that you can get out of the report also. And I congratulate EV Reporter for giving us the opportunity, and I say thanks to them for giving us the opportunity to make this report and present in front of the audience. Now, in terms of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, the report which we have named today is around, powering the charging infrastructure. Now, in terms of powering the charging infrastructure, today I am going to talk about several chapters in this report, and what we have done is tried making this in terms of a story, not really in terms of explaining the contents what we have included in the different chapters of the report. So first I'm going to talk about the overview of the charging infrastructure in India, then the regulatory issues, which definitely are one of the most important, and the recent issuance of the guidelines from Bureau of Energy Efficiency makes it even more interesting point of discussion during the day today. Then I'll move on the charging infrastructure investment trends, then around the business models, and then the one of the very important topics which have not been much discussed, we have tried focusing on, and I thanks a lot of industry stakeholders for giving their inputs, is around the manufacturing, charger manufacturing landscape in India. Then I'll also talk about the opportunities in other ASEAN countries, and in the end we have prepared some kind of challenges as well as the way forward, what we believe in terms of the recommendation. Moving on, so first question is, has the development of charging infrastructure been robust and sustainable in India? To explain that, I would like to talk about some of the numbers in electric vehicle industry. So across the vehicle segments, let's start with two-wheelers and three-wheelers, followed by four-wheelers and buses. Data, I think we all are aware about the data. But if you look at the number of companies or the percentage in terms of others category, so which was in calendar year 83%, the total number of companies in others segment 83%, which has gone down to 17% for two-wheelers, which means that consolidation has already started happening in two-wheeler industry, which indicates that the product quality issues are being addressed and more better quality products are coming. That was really required for the betterment of the industry. Then the three-wheeler situation is very different. You can see this number, the percentage in others category going up mainly because of e-rickshaw, because of the kind of product requirements. If you look at this number for only L5 category, you will find the situation really very different and similar to two-wheelers. Passenger car story has been very, very different in India, without much support of the government incentives, because they are incentivized only for the taxi segment, not the personal segment. So you will see not only Indian companies dominating this market, but slowly and gradually introduction of international players driving the growth of the passenger car industry in India. For buses, it's all government procurement, but the growth has been really in double digits and sustainable in last 4 or 5 financial years. Let's talk about the options which are available with India in terms of the chargers. So we have plug-in chargers, we have swapping, we also have some of the innovations happening around pantograph charging or the battery swapping or the wireless charging. But today we are going to mainly focus on the plug-in charging stations and plug-in charging infrastructure situation in India. Let me talk about some of the numbers. 1.68 is the average charging guns per stations. 27,464 is the number of charging guns, not the charging station, but the charging guns. More than 80 CPOs working in India. 15 is the highest average number of guns per station for a particular CPO. More than 10,000 light EVSE guns in public charging infrastructure. Also more than 3,800 CCS2 charging guns in public, which indicates the development of fast charging for passenger cars. More than 7,000 is the maximum station in public from a single CPO. 198 is the maximum number of light EV/AC guns at a station, and 126 is the number of CCS2 guns at a single station. Moving on, I think this is all, we are aware about the spread of charging infrastructure in different cities dominated by tier 1, mainly tier 1 cities in India. In last a few months, if you see the data, there has been a lot of change. Instead of Delhi dominating now, Bangalore has got the number 1 spot, mainly because of the development of slow chargers for two-wheelers. This data point is really very, very interesting. We have analyzed the different type of chargers at three points, and if you look at this number, which indicates that there is a sustainable growth for the fast chargers, which is CCS2, which is kind of adopted India. Numbers you can interpret like, for example, Bharat AC 001, 60% in May 2023, at least 60% of the charging stations has at least one gun of the Bharat AC 001 charger. At the same time, CHAdeMO numbers are going down, CCS2 increasing, which means industry has adopted CCS2 as a standard, so there is no point of discussing further about the standards for passenger car. At the same time, standards have not been finalized, not been kind of consolidated by industry, but mostly being talked about LEVDC 6 and 7, and one of them probably we expect is going to be industry standard, even if it is not mandated by the government. Moving on, there are two ways how we can interpret whether the number of chargers are sufficient in India or not. First, we calculate the overall, on left-hand side of the chart, you can see total number of chargers available per car. So the ratio comes out to be 12:1, which seems to be very encouraging. But if we look at the realistic numbers in terms of UIO and the total guns, which are mostly being utilized at the public charging stations in terms of, let's say type 2 AC, CCS2 and CHAdeMO, this is mostly utilized at public charging stations for a passenger car, then this ratio comes out to be 20:1, not 12:1. So we are far behind from China and European Union, but we are doing far better than ASEAN countries, Thailand, Indonesia and others. So how the charging is happening and what is the scope of the fast charging in India? So let's look at the segment-wise. For two-wheelers, 65% charging happens at home, 15% at public, and 20% is the community charging. Similar trends you will see at least in 2 to 3 years. In future, it might change. 15% is the private and 20% is the captive charging happening for three-wheelers. 55% is the public charging, 20%, and 55% is the number which happens as captive charging, mostly pay and park arrangements for three-wheelers. Charging story, similar to vehicle introduction story of passenger car, is different in India. Currently, it's 80-20 ratio. All the CPOs, also manufacturers expect this going little, down, at least for the home charging, but current situation is the 80-20 ratio. In the introduction, Vineet also talked about, home charging happening a lot in India. And the first set of consumers are there who are affluent, so probably they have arrangements of those kind of chargings, but the moment we add new and the second layer of consumers, it's going to be a really different pattern. In the buses segment, mostly it's happening captive, and if you look at intercity and intracity happens around 90 to 100% as depot charging. Probably we can see more insights during the day how depot charging the utilization at depot charging very, very high and makes it profitable business, and how it can be, probably learnings can be incorporated in other segments. Regulations, I think, is the most important topic today. So regulations have been instrumental in the development of the overall charging infrastructure in India. I think there are 3 key regulations which have positively impacted the overall industry. One is the no licensing required when BEE or the Ministry of Power announced in 2018. Then the GST reduction from 18% to 5% on chargers, and categorizing electricity or the charging infrastructure as a separate set of consumer that boosted a lot of charging infrastructure, a lot of companies to invest, and that is how the numbers you can see CPOs, EMSPs, and charging manufacturers going up a lot in recent past. State governments through supply side and demand side incentives have also been contributing a lot. And I think a point of discussion can be how new guidelines can be accepted or utilized for the further enhancement of the charging infrastructure in India. A very, very important trend you can see in terms of EV investments, they have been decreasing while the investments in charging infrastructure have increased in the last financial year or the current financial year. So around the charging infrastructure, if we only compare 3-4 years data, because that is when the investments around charging infrastructure started happening, it was 6% in 2022, which is now 21% in ongoing financial year 2024. So not the financial year, the calendar year. So we can say that is why I made the point that next 2 to 3 years is going to be a lot of action around charging infrastructure, much more than around other part of the ecosystem. Moving on, leveraging growth with multiple stakeholders. In this you can see because of the policies and the policy implementations, or I can say the right policy implementations, a lot of companies have entered in this market and started manufacturing. So in the manufacturing, you can see 60 plus manufacturers in India, 80 plus CPOs operating in India, and 10 plus EMSP players. Whether this is a very good thing or not, I think can be debated. But in terms of how the future is going to look like, we expect some kind of consolidation happening in future across the value chain, starting from manufacturing to CPO business to EMSPs, because the first set of companies which entered across the value chain were really very, very serious players. And I think learnings are incorporated by startups and other companies, and eventually you will see lesser number of companies in future. Moving on, this is the stakeholder mapping. With this slide, I would like to only say that a lot of opportunities are across the vehicle segment, starting from CPO business to site provider to discoms to all kind of value chain partners.Moving on, a very important topic which I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation also when I started, that the charger manufacturing, whenever we talk about manufacturing, in any kind of manufacturing, especially related to alternate powertrains, we talk about three things: energy security, carbon emissions, and manufacturing import dependence. I think a lot of focus from government as well as from the OEMs and tier 1 organizations has been put around manufacturing of vehicles and how it can be really localized and how you manage the manufacturing import dependence, but not much has been talked at least about the charger manufacturing. So let's talk about whether charger manufacturing is truly local in India with real level of localization or the genuine localization. As per our calculations, net localization of a 30 kilowatt charger is around 34 to 53%. But if we go ahead and calculate the DVA, domestic value addition, which increases to 56 to 69%, because margins and other things are also included in this. The assembly cost and the margins are also included in this. So at the lower hand side, it's 34%, higher hand side, it's 53%, which is really a lower level of localization. Through the government interventions, industry, overall maturity probably in future, it is likely to increase. Let's have also look at the cost contribution of different components: power modules, charging guns, output switch gears, etc. So the power modules and charging controllers are one of the highest cost contributors with 27% and 17%. I was talking to one of the charger manufacturer, and he mentioned that as you increase the power ratings, the power module cost keeps increasing. So we can take these numbers with a pinch of salt that this is only for 30 kilowatt charger. And if you look at the localization level, the highest cost contributors are really targeted for the later part of the localization. And I believe further government might have to increase these timelines or shift these timelines, because it's really challenging to go for a real level of localization, at least 40%, 50% for the power controllers, etc. within a year timeline. If you look at the highest cost contributors, which are power modules and charging controllers, the localization levels are also very, very limited. And for power modules, the most of the contents are mostly imported, and then they are also targeted for the later part of the timeline which government has decided. So overall, we can say that localization is really a challenge in terms of charges. We can have debate about volume requirements and etc., and how to compete, especially a country like China, which produces these chargers at a scale. But India has to find a way through the charger manufacturers as well as the the policy guidelines that how to go for a real level of localization for chargers in India. We have been seeing even the charger manufacturing is at a nascent stage in India with many charging companies, but they are not focusing only on the domestic markets. Many of them have got investments from outside, and they are also focusing on exporting, especially the ASEAN countries with the increasing sales of different ASEAN markets. So if we talk about Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, Thailand tops the chart with a very dramatic change in the market share in last few years. Every month, the market share of electric vehicles are changing in Thailand, which is around 7 to 10% at this point in time, followed by Indonesia, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Other markets are also unique, but Thailand is also a big opportunity for all the stakeholders here. Why Thailand market has seen really good momentum in last few years? Because of the several government policy, and also many of the global OEMs introducing their vehicles in India. I'll not go in the detail. This is all included in the report, so you can have a look later. And these are some of the transformative policies. Board of Investments and increasing the tax cuts, etc., are working really in the favor of electric mobility movement in Thailand. Moving on, last part of my presentation, I'll talk about key challenges across EV charging value chain and some of the recommendations which we have prepared. So these recommendations are prepared based on mostly the primary interactions which we had with different stakeholders. Some of you are present here, so thank you very much for your opinions. And also we have done several data analysis to come out with such output as well as the recommendations. So the key challenge across EV value chain, I'll start with EV manufacturers. So there are obviously many more challenges and many more opportunities, but we are going to talk only few challenges which we foresee around charging infrastructure business in India in terms of EV, to begin with in terms of EVSE manufacturing. So first one is PMP definition issues. Second one is damage to EVSE due to the power quality. And third one is the quality workforce, because as industry is scaling up, charging manufacturing has also to scale up. For that, you need many more qualified engineers and the resources which are really not available. I think we have representatives from different institutions, including BITS Pilani here. So I think they should prepare talent pool for future. Moving on, challenges for CPOs. First one is FAME and financial support is only for PSUs. So that is how all the kind of guidelines are applicable for PSUs. So it is really important to think about ways by which private CPOs can also become part of this initiative, so that they can also leverage the policy and put up the chargers which really can be utilized, because the PSUs, the chargers are not really being utilized. But the good part is they have been able to spread a lot of awareness because they have set up the chargers in the beginning. Second one is delay in connections. I think this issue is being addressed in the recent guidelines which Ministry of Power has issued. But the guideline was earlier also. But let's say the guideline is connections within 15 days, but sometimes it takes around 6 months to get the connection. So that issue really has to be addressed. Then the next one is vandalism and need for manned stations. We are saying this need for manned stations, but it does not make financial sense. So industry will have to find some technology solutions which can manage without putting somebody on those stations. Then the lower level of utilization for individual use cases and site scouting issues due to urban planning challenges. Moving on, in terms of the end users, it's range anxiety, which has now become the charge anxiety in terms of, not the number of charges, because I talked about 12:1 or 22:1 is the ratio which we have in India, But whether they are working, whether they are functional is the bigger question, that whether they are have been set up or not. Second is the standardization of EV charges for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. A lot of discussions has happened about it. Four-wheeler has already adopted CCS2 in India, and we believe that probably LEV DC 6 or 7 is going to be adopted by industry, but that is a big issue at this point in time. Then several other consumer issues like multiple apps, payment challenges, etc., and lack of consumer awareness, how to operate these chargers, because those guidelines are sometimes missing, or sometimes consumer doesn't pay a lot of attention about reading it and understanding it. So because there is a need of consumer-centric setting up of this charging infrastructure business in India, so we have divided this and categorized them into 4 parts in terms of issues. One is discoverability, which is ease of charger discovery. So for example, inconvenience due to multiple apps to locate the chargers, inaccessible charging locations, limited geographical availability, and lack of route planning features are part of the discoverability. Second is once you have these issues, then we need to think about the reliability, which is inconsistent charging stations, which are operational performance. Charging guns are sometimes stuck and they do not operate and nobody knows how to fix it. Poor customer services for troubleshooting, then the frequent errors during charging. So these are some of the issues related to the reliability. Then we have transparency and R&D issues also. Moving on, based on these issues and the analysis, what we have identified as recommendations, some of them can be acted on in terms of policy, and some of the suggestions and recommendations are for industry also. First one is including private CPOs, which I talked that India needs to find a way to incentivize private CPOs also, not only the public CPOs. Second, robust monitoring mechanism for compliance under PMP scheme. So why we are telling this is that policy is formulated with very clear guidelines that this much localization, or the real level of localization, needs to be achieved at product level. But there is no way to kind of monitor them and make sure that that is happening. So that has happened in case of in case of the vehicles also, but there has to be a way by which government can monitor and make sure that these are the chargers which are there in India are localized, whatever localization is the target. Then in terms of standardization, we believe government should not push much about standardizing. Market is at that stage when it can take its own decision of kind of standardizing, which has happened in case of the passenger cars, so that we can do for the two-wheelers and three-wheelers also. Then fourth recommendation which I want to talk about is sensitization of state discoms for faster connections and increased government support for grid upgradation in general at local level, as well as the pan-India level. Next one is in terms of enhancing the support for urban infrastructure, so that the development boards, the urban infrastructure development boards to CPOs in identifying the proper location for setting up of the charging stations. And the last but not the least, initiatives and improved marketing and spends from the OEMs as well as CPOs, because until or unless you make people and the consumers aware about the entire situation of charging infrastructure issues and how they can be utilized, probably the growth is not going to be as faster as we expect. So with these recommendations, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. Yeah, I can take up questions in case we have any.
Hello? Yes.
Mike, please.
Hello. I'm a research fellow at Center for Social and Economic Progress, which is a non-profit policy think tank.
Can you be a little
Hello.
closer to the mic?
Am I audible now?
Perfect, perfect.
So my name is Shamashish. I'm a research fellow at Center for Social and Economic Progress, which is a policy think tank actually based in New Delhi. In your report, are you able to capture the current utilization trend? Because that is a key parameter which impacts the business viability of the CPOs. And the present understanding is, or the market commentary is, it's low, but how far low? At what locations it's low? Means what in terms of what kind of charging stations? Because without knowing that pattern, I think to develop business models, to really make it a viable business, it would be difficult. Because
I got the question.
we have the fixed cost, but what is the utilization? of the asset?
Thank you. Thank you very much for pointing out this. Yes, this is one of the biggest issues. The utilization of chargers are really very, very low. When I say low, then I think I should talk also about the range in what it is, right? So it's commonly understood that the range is starting from 4% to 40%. I'll first talk about where it is profitable. So in my presentation, I was talking about the buses segment or the captive charging. There are companies or the CPOs which are setting up the captive charging hubs for taxis or for the shared mobility. For buses segment, we have witnessed that in some of the locations, the utilization is as high as 60%, 65%. So that is making a lot of financial viability and make business sense. So those kind of business cases are profitable. In any business which emerges at a nascent stage, I think you need to identify few pockets wherein the business is immediately going to be the profitable. So the captive charging in terms of depot charging for buses, also fleet charging at hubs is one of the opportunities where this is already profitable. Then second set of companies are investing by expecting that in future the utilization is going to go up, because if you look at the estimated numbers for electric vehicles, estimated number for chargers, the next set of profitability is going to come from, let's say, chargers on highways and in intra-city chargers also. So the strategy is you identify few pockets, you have fixed number of vehicles, you have fixed idea on what kind of routes the vehicles are going to run, and that is how the utilizations are high, so that higher range, which is more than 40%, 50%. And then as number of vehicles go high, probably utilization is going to be high. Let's say once it reaches around 20%, business starts become profitable. So that's my answer. And in terms of when this situation is going to come, I think it will take some time.
But with the rising increase in the driving range of the EV models, because if you see Nexon, the earlier model and the current model, the Nexon EV Max, the driving range is increasing. Do you think that actually also impacts the footfall at the charging stations, because then the need for top-up charging will be less?
So if you look at the charging pattern in India, I talked about, you are referring the passenger car. So 80-20 is the ratio. 80% is happening at home, 20% is happening at the public. Why that 20%? That is also emergency charging. Whenever a personal consumer is buying the vehicle for their personal use, they do not plan any public charging. They plan entirely this on home charging, and when there is a chance or there is a situation for emergency charging, then only they would like to go for that emergency charging. Now the vehicle range, earlier Tata Nexon you mentioned was on 30 kilowatt hours, now it's on 40, and going forward also we also estimate it is on an average it's going to be 60 within 3 years or 4 years. So you are saying that probably there is an opportunity that there is a chance that even the need is going to be lesser and lesser for utilizing, right? I think one point you missed during the presentation is that the kind of consumers which we have at this point in time, because the vehicle prices are very high, so the buyers are also affluent, which means they have, places, the kind of houses they are living in has the arrangements for home charging. So that is how the current structure is. In the current structure also, it's 80-20, because you can't plan 100% of charging. The moment we add next set of consumers, which don't have these facilities, so they will require more and more public charging. So that is how, once the second layer of customers are there, the public charging is going to increase in terms of utilization. The moment you have third set of consumers, it is going to increase dramatically. So that is when the entirely it is going to profitable. But if you really calculate the profitability analysis in next 3 years, 2 years, if you are thinking of making this business profitable by investing, I don't think so. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, Pritesh. I'm Sunil Bhatnagar from IPL Tech. We manufacture electric trucks of heavy duty of 50 ton each. My question regarding EV charging infrastructure, when we are talking about it, I think we should include some measures about the green charging also. Because charging from renewable means is also an important part. Though presently you are saying only 20% of the thing is going in public. But if you take the case of electric buses and where it is close to 60%. So definitely, because this thermal is adding a lot of carbon emission issues and all that. So ultimately the vehicle is zero emission vehicle, but the charging is not zero emission. So I think we should include that also in this infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunil ji, always for your suggestions. We will incorporate this. We have separate studies done around well-to-wheel emissions around the vehicle. And if we get an opportunity to work on well-to-wheel emissions for chargers or end-to-end emissions for chargers, we would like to. But thank you very much. We will incorporate next time. Please.
Hi. Hello. I am Dhanesh Sisodia. I'm again IPL Tech Electric only. So my question is this on a charging utilization. So there are many plans, but there's another threat which I am looking while I am meeting with the customer in daily kind of in a market. So there's a hub charging kind of in a position. But this free pipe is not allowing to utilize that hub charging even on a 80-85% because the drivers who is having the kind of an free electricity at home. So he's asking some money for the charging and then he's managing that well. So do we plan any roadmap how to come out from these free pipe kind of a thing which is directly affecting to the businesses? So
yeah, I got your question, but if you analyze how, I mean, government also, industry also plans for ideal things, but what consumer accepts is much more important. Whenever I am buying a vehicle, I definitely want to charge this at home. So if you want to push this through regulations by increasing the charges for home charging, I think it will not work. So in order to, as I said, you can increase the utilization of public chargers by proper planning of having more number of vehicles if it is hub charging or captive charging. But I don't think we can have any regulation or regulatory push so that people avoid home charging and do only public charging. So I'm not sure if that kind of push can happen.
Hello, good morning. My question about the connector segment. About in two-wheeler and three-wheeler, there are various kind of standards using by all OEMs. Why they are not showing interest to the one common standard?
So why all of them are not converging towards one standard, right? Yeah, story is like this. So when India started thinking about electrification, especially in passenger cars, so in any innovative technology, let's say we talk about any other automotive component also, let's say talk about throttle body or common rail injection system or injectors. Companies develop the technology, they try to keep hold on that technology. So they are not really opening up that technology. That is also same for the governments. So if government has technology, they want to promote it. So in the beginning, it was expected that India is going to adopt CHAdeMO rather than CCS2 because CHAdeMO was a Japanese standard. Many people say it's far better than even CCS2 in several things. So Japan wanted to push the CHAdeMO. Europe wanted to push the CCS2, right? And eventually many of the OEMs, because Europe market developed much faster than Japan market in electrification, so CCS2 became much more popular. That is why in different OEMs adopted that, and now in India also you can see that becoming a common standard and everybody adopting that. Such situation has not been in case of the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, because the two-wheelers and three-wheelers are very region-specific markets in terms of products. The kind of range and the kind of the power requirements are there in the vehicle. So that will also locally emerge. So in India, you are aware that top two not top two, but two OEMs are working on different charging standards, which they have adopted. So initially they thought that can be one of the competitive advantage through which they can have more market penetrations. So that is why companies have been pushing their own standard, and because there was no standard in the beginning. So because now the sales of one OEM is going far better than others, so probably that standard becomes a common standard. Because everybody has to follow the standard, else they will have limited charging opportunities and they will lose the sales of the market. So I think that everybody is not going to collaborate and decide on one standard, but market itself will decide its own standard.
Okay, so
Priya,
we are,
yeah,
we are going to
should
take
we-
the last question for this session.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन हिंदी में है। चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तो बड़े बड़े शहरों में प्रोग्राम हो रहे हैं, लेकिन अभी रिसेंटली में छोटे टियर 2 टियर 3 शहरों में चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं बढ़ रहा है। अभी रिसेंटली हमारे पास एक न्यूज़ आई थी कि राजस्थान का बूंदी शहर जो 1400 गाड़ियों का RTO अप्रूव्ड है, लेकिन वहाँ एक भी चार्जिंग स्टेशन नहीं है। वहाँ कैसे शहर बढ़ेंगे? उस शहर की मतलब बड़े शहरों की अपेक्षा अगर हम छोटे शहरों की बात करें तो चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कैसे हो सकता है?
चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बड़े शहरों और छोटे शहरों में पैटर्न थोड़ा डिफरेंट होगा। अगर हम गाड़ियों की बात करें तो लोग जैसे हमें लगता है कि 2 व्हीलर्स और 3 व्हीलर्स सिर्फ शहरों में अडॉप्ट हुए हैं, ऐसा नहीं है। अगर आप इनिशियल सेट ऑफ कंज्यूमर्स एटलीस्ट 15% से 20% गाँव में थे, जो छोटे छोटे बिजनेसेस करते हैं। लेट्स से आपके पास 4 ट्रैक्टर हैं, आप पैसा इमीडिएटली यू डोंट गेट व्हेन यू गिव द सर्विस, तो वो लेने के लिए आपकी रेंज बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो वो पैसा लेने के लिए बहुत सारे लोगों ने 2 व्हीलर्स खरीदे क्योंकि वहाँ पे वो पैसा बचा रहे थे। अब बड़ी कंपनीज जो चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में प्राइवेट कंपनीज़ की बात करूँ जो सेटअप कर रहे हैं, वो सबसे पहले बड़े शहरों को ही टैप करेंगे। क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पे प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी बनने के चांसेस ज़्यादा हैं। जैसे अगर हम टैक्सी सेगमेंट की बात करें या डिपो चार्जिंग की बात करें, तो यहाँ पे गाड़ियाँ ज़्यादा हैं, यूटिलाइजेशन जल्दी बढ़ सकता है, तो फोकस यहाँ पे रहेगा। आपका सजेशन जो है प्रॉबेबली हम ऐसे कर सकते हैं कि जो गवर्नमेंट, अगर आप छोटे शहरों में या गाँव की बात करेंगे तो लोग 100% उसको होम चार्जिंग पे जो गाड़ियाँ खरीद रहे हैं, होम चार्जिंग से ही उनके पास ऑप्शन है चलाने का, इमरजेंसी चार्जिंग के ऑप्शंस ही नहीं है। तो जो प्लान कर रहे हैं उसी तरह से कर रहे हैं। तो जो गवर्नमेंट के इंसेंटिव्स हैं, अगर गवर्नमेंट कैन डिसाइड 2 थिंग्स, अगर उनको अगर प्राइवेट को नहीं देना है तो नेक्स्ट सेट में दे कैन फोकस मोर ऑन दोज काइंड ऑफ सिटीज़।
लेकिन मगर लोग इस पर अवेयरनेस नहीं है।
अवेयरनेस एक बहुत बड़ा इशू है और वो हमेशा होता है किसी भी इंडस्ट्री में। जब EV की पॉलिसी आई, MNRE की पॉलिसी आई इन 2010, इट वाज फॉलोड बाय NMMP, देन फेम 1, फेम 2, फेम 1 तक हम बात करते थे कि अवेयरनेस नहीं है EV की। लोग बोलते हैं फेम 1 वाज अ फेलियर केस, मैनी पीपल स्पेशली इंडस्ट्री पीपल से, बट गवर्नमेंट सेज इट वाज अ वेरी वेरी सक्सेसफुल स्कीम बिकॉज दे वर एबल टू क्रिएट द अवेयरनेस। तो हमने अपनी रिकमेंडेशन का भी 3rd या 4th पॉइंट यही बोला है कि अवेयरनेस बढ़ाना है चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का। तो दैट इज़ वन टास्क आई थिंक जो करना है।
लेकिन एक चीज़ में आज की डेट में गवर्नमेंट बोल रही 2030 तक 30%, लेकिन आज की डेट में हम लोग 7% पे बैठे हुए हैं। इसको हम कैसे
आप रिपोर्ट पढ़ना, उसमें एस्टिमेशंस लिखे हैं कि कितना होगा 2030 तक।
थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू।
Hello. Yeah, ma'am, I have one question. Is it fine?
Yes, and that's the last question.
Okay, thanks. Sir, this is Mandeep from here, last. Yeah. So this is Mandeep from semiconductor company. And my question is related to infrastructure. And as per your analysis report, it says that 80%, 65% people are charging at their private infrastructure, right? They are not charging it public. So CPOs are like more focusing on the major cities. Okay, so the charging infrastructures are more there in the major cities, not in the tier 1 or tier 2 cities, right? or some tourist places. So what is my question is, we should focus on the areas where people charge at the public places. Okay, because if we focus more towards the major cities only, then the major cities are more charging at their private locations only, right? And upcoming, if you see in the major cities, the houses are having like constructing the all parking at their home only, right? So
I
it
got
will
it.
be in the future.
I got the question. I got it. Thank you. So you are saying that why companies are focusing on setting up more and more charging infrastructure in major cities, they need to identify places where utilization can be maximum, right? So why they are
Exactly.
focusing on charging, why they are focusing on major cities? Because there are opportunities and there are chances that they identify such pockets in major cities. That is the reason why they are focusing on major cities. So for example, if you have a depot charging in somewhere in Delhi, vis-a-vis in a tier 4 town or village, I think chances of more and more utilization is here in a tier 1 city. Second is, same is true for the taxi segment, same is true for wherein you can have more and more vehicles for charging. So that is how you increase utilization, that is how you think of profitability. But if you look at the second trend, this was initially it was all intra-city within major cities. Now you will see chargers at highways, right? On highways where they are putting on dhabas, on motels, on hotels where people stay and charge more vehicles at tourist places. So I think that is already happening, and you will see more and more chargers at some of the tourist places. Space constraints, etc., become a problem. That is why we have recommended the authorities to assist CPOs in providing and finding out the locations, the better locations as well. So that second set is already coming. So why intra-city, major cities, intra-city? Because there is more opportunity of such charging happening and more utilization. So that second trend is also already there on highways and also on tourist places. Thank you very much. So thank you very much. All of us are here. We can catch up one-on-one for any kind of questions. Thank you very much.